guys, girls. 7:30 in the morning. Kind of look like Tim the Tool Man, huh? 7:30 in the morning. We headed to Tallahassee, Florida from Panama City. About a 2-hour drive to the test center. Going to go take some project management tests for certified building contractor. We've been studying pretty hard in between working 2 jobs. Pressure's on. I feel good. I feel a little nervous at the same time. So I'm just gonna give it a run and see. I mean, we want to do good, obviously. I feel like we're gonna do good, but we'll just have to be able to get those books right. I got a long story behind all this that pushing me to do my certified. Wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but it's not the morning to get into that. So we're not scheduled to test until 12 o'clock my time. Tallahassee's an hour ahead, so I'm kind of basing my whole morning off of Tallahassee time. So should be that I get there an hour 15 minutes, hour and a half maybe ahead of time. Probably a little less than an hour and a half. I'm gonna stop and get a bottle of water and maybe something to snack on between here and there. Get a little, maybe a good hour of study in or review before actually walking into the test center. Every time I've ever looked, I've noticed that there's usually 2 time frames to schedule your exam. It's usually 7 a.m. or usually around 12, depending on the length of the test. I went blindly 2 times to take business and finance, no studying whatsoever. Didn't even have the books. And the first time I took it, I run out of time. I did get all the questions answered because I just kind of went through real quick and just picked something on about 35 questions maybe. I missed it by 1 question. I was disappointed a little, but I was happy with myself overall to not even crack a book. Like I said, didn't even have the books at the time, and I missed it by 1 question. So I'm a little hard-headed, so I rescheduled and I went back one more time just to try to pass it again based on, hey, I missed it by 1 question. I approach it a little different and try to pass it this time. Pace myself a little better. So, with that being said, I went back about a month later and took the test again. I did not run out of time, but I missed it by 3 questions. So the first time I missed it by 1, second time I missed it by 3. And for Father's Day, my daughter, who's in the Navy, by the way, go Navy. My daughter, for Father's Day, purchased all my books for me. And I spent several months, working my regular jobs and doing what I do, and something hit me. It come over me one day. I was driving down the road, and I was like, I said, I have to justify my daughter spending $1,500 on school books for me. I was, that's her hard-earned money. I guess guilt was setting in that, I've had these books a little while, and honestly, just between work and just normal life, I still hadn't cracked a book. I just didn't have time. Or I didn't make time. So it is hard. I'm not a reader. I hate to read. Didn't like it at school. Just wasn't something that really appealed me. My sister, she's like a book reader. Like, she sits down and reads books, and is like probably the fastest reader I've ever seen in my life. My father-in-law, he sits around and reads books all the time. My daughter, she's gotten so many Bookit awards with school reading books, and you think it was in my blood, but it's just not. I just don't like it. But and the reason I say that is you got to make time to read the books. You got to get the books, read through them. If you buy your books pre-tabbed and pre-highlighted, that's okay. I actually bought the books unhighlighted with the tabs, and I bought them from Exam Pros. They don't give me no promotional for advertising for them. I've been using their system for a little while. I went back and actually purchased an additional online training thing with them. It was, I guess, overall pretty good. It's kind of somewhat a little bit misleading because it's not really a lot of online training. It's more self-motivated training, but they give you a lot of good pointers, a lot of good study material, and it's broken down really well, shall I say. Just about each chapter in every book, well, shall I say, like the Florida Contractors Manual, there's 10 10 chapters in that book, there is a test questionnaire on each chapter. Each other book has its own questionnaire for each book. So you get anywhere from 50, 55 to 100, 150 questions per book. And there's a study guide that tells you, what books start with, what sections to do. Your AIA is going to be one of your most critical studies. It's very thin, it's very small. There's three. There's the AIA 201, 401, and 701. Those books, don't be intimidated, or don't let those books mislead you, because they're only like 20 pages, 30 pages maybe of each book. But there's so much in it. It's almost, the whole book is like directions, kind of, sort of. There is so much in those three little books that you need to focus on. There's a guide, like I was saying, that teaches you, how to focus on this book and that book and work your way through it. It's extra money, obviously, for the online training class, but I believe, honestly, in depth, with all the extra simulated test questions, that helps you. For project management, they give you 6 final exams. They give you 6 final exams for contract administration, and they give you 4 final exams for business and finance. So when you get through the book, or through the books, I should say, you can kind of look at it and get down to the final exams in your online training, and you can open those up, and again, all it is just simulated test questions. But time yourself. Sit down. You know how long you got to take the exam. You got 4.5 hours on contract administration and project management. It's, I think, 6.5 or 7.5 hours on project management. So when you sit down, you can set a timer, and watch it. Watch your timer and do your test question. Put yourself in this simulated testing scenario. I'd suggest pick a early Saturday morning or early Sunday morning or something. Maybe you can catch everybody still asleep. If you have the luxury of going into your office or something like that and saying, Becky, hold all my calls for the next 4 hours, well, that would be recommended. That way you're not going to have any interruptions in testing. You don't need any interruptions in your simulated final exams. That way you know where you're at and how efficient you are with testing. Because people ask all the time, man, that's a lot of stuff to know. You know, how do you take in all that stuff? And you're not going to do it. You will learn it over a period of time, but I can assure you, all those books stacked up on the kitchen table is 24 inches tall. There's no way that you can, you know, in a short period of time, you know, receiving the books and, you know, going to schedule your exam, that you're going to take in all that knowledge. This test is based off of getting the correct answer, obvious, but what you're training to do is you're testing on the ability to find the answer to that question in that book, and you have to do it efficiently. Anybody can sit down in 20 minutes and find an answer in a book, but you got to do it in about 2.5 minutes. With that said, some questions will take you 2.5 minutes to read and comprehend. Some of them are confusing. Like I said, when I took business and finance, there was some questions that you'd read it and then you'd have to read it again, and then you'd catch yourself reading it again. And when that happens, you know, if you calculate the total number of questions you're going to have by the total amount of time you have, it's roughly about 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that per question. So if you burn up, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, 10 minutes on one question, ultimately you've used up time for 4 questions, you know. So, but the good thing is, on another note, is there's going to be a few of those questions, you're going to read it, and you're going to automatically, as soon as you read it, know the answer. So by automatically knowing the answer, that's like throwing 2.5 minutes in your bank. And if you can do that 4 or 5 times, then you've kind of gained back your time, and now you're back on track. So you got to pace yourself. That's where those practice exams come in, is being able to read a question, determine which book it's in, and find it efficiently. What I'm seeing in one of the online training things is it says you don't need any math questions to pass the exam. I know that sounds crazy. I don't know how many math questions are in project management, but we're finna find out today. So I don't know if that means you don't need any math questions answered correctly in any of the tests, or all of them combined, or if it's just business and finance. Business and finance has several math questions in it, because I've took it. So if it's overall, you know, that may be okay. Based off of Pearson, it says that based on the books, you will have 50 questions equally weighted, may vary 3% either way. So 12 books 50 questions. That's 4.2 questions. 4.2 questions a book. So that's project management, 12 books. Contract administration is 12 books. And they're both tests are the same books. It's just you're only allotted those 12 books in on those two tests. So out of a 2-foot tall stack of books, you're getting 4 questions out of each one. So that's challenging. So the ability to read that question and then look at your books and go, that question, that answer is in that book. And sometimes there's going to be 2 books that are going to cover the same topic. Both of them may give you the answer, but I have found that generally it's in one. It may even reference, you may look in one and it reference you to another book. I think I found that like once, but it says also to, when you sit down for your test, first thing you do is read all the questions. I'm looking at time frame, and I'm going to practice their procedure today. So we're going to test their theory and see how it works. It says to read all the questions before doing any answers. And they give you, back up, they give you a dry eraser board, kind of, sort of. It's like a little flimsy piece of paper you write on with a dry eraser marker. When you go to sit down and test. So you list your books before you ever start the test. That way you're not doing this during the test timing and burning up your time writing this stuff down. But write down each book on your dry erase board. Even if you abbreviate it in a way that you know what it means, you can number your books if you want to, and as long as you remember how you categorize your book. And if you can't do that, if you want to write down, FBC, Florida building book, building code. If you got to write the whole thing out, write the whole thing out. And then, as you read each question, well, you're not going to have the questions at that point, but you go ahead and list each book out on your dry erase board. So when you get done, you should have 12 books listed. I list AIA as one, just because they're all together. And it's pretty simple to distinguish who each one of those books refer to. So you could take it with that, but you could do 201, 401, 701 if you want. That's up to you. So once you get those listed, turn around and get everything organized, get yourself ready to take your test, and then when you hit start on your computer and you start reading your questions, read question number 1, and you should be able to start recognizing what book that question is in. as you read the question. There's going to be a couple you're going to have to think about it for a second. You're gonna. I catch myself sometimes. I'll go through 3 books before I'm like, this is the right book. So that's part of getting familiar with your book. But as you read that question and you say, this question is going to be in the Florida Building Code. Well, write question number 1 beside, not write the question, but write number 1 by Florida Building Code. Read question number 2. Question number 2, you realize that it's going to be in the Florida Contractors Manual. Write number 2 by Florida Contractors Manual. Go through that whole test and write down which book each question is from. And then at that point, you can go back to the top and you can open up Florida Contractors Manual and look up each question that's in that book by looking at your dry erase board. Then that way you only use, you pick up that book, you answer all the questions in it, and then you can set that book to the side because you know that you're done with that book. That I've answered every question on the test that's coming out of this book. And then I don't guarantee you may have to drop back and grab it again and kind of reference something out of it, maybe a table or a chart or something like that. But honestly, this is based off of instructions off of the Exam Pros online training. It kind of sounds odd to me to do it like that, but and then as I think about it, though, it kind of makes sense. So, I mean, I think honestly that's just the way I'm going to try this test today. And be honest, I have not practiced it that way. I sit at the kitchen table, I got all my books lined up, I read a question, I grab the book, read a question, grab the book. But I find myself, and I see that, and I find myself, I'll pull this book out, I flip it open, I read a question, I get the answer, I put the book back, I read the next question, and I grab a different book, and then the very next question, I reach back and grab the same book I just put back. So, I guess instead of flip-flopping books back and forth, it may be beneficial to, pick up one book, answer 5 questions out of equally weighted questions, 4 questions. So to answer those questions out of the book, and then put that book to the side and grab another book, keep rolling. 4.5 hours. 50 questions. That gives you about 4 minutes a question. Maybe more than that. I calculated it. Maybe 6. I think it's 6 minutes. So, that sounds like a lot longer, and it is. It's longer time for business or for project management, contract administration. Less questions and more minutes per question to answer it. But you're also digging through 12 books instead of 3. So, today's test day, so we're gonna see. It's been a struggle. I've spent a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, 12 hours a day, sitting at a table. I work full time builder, remodel, and I'm a full-time inspector. And it's hard to make the time to sit down and study these books. But you to be efficient with it, you're going to have to do it. There's no way around it. You're going to have to sit down and study those books. When you order your books, you can order them pre-tabbed and pre-highlighted. I think it's about $100 extra. That sounds like a lot of money for someone to go through your book and highlight it. But in all reality, it'll take you 2 or 3 days to go through all those books and highlight them. Now, I highlighted my own, and the good thing with that is they give you a paper. If you choose to highlight your own books, they give you a printout, and it tells you everything to highlight. It'll say Florida Contractors Manual, Chapter 1, page 21. Highlight this sentence. And Chapter 3, page 2. Highlight this sentence. And me personally, I think that's honestly the best way to do it. Because if you will do that yourself and read what you're highlighting as you're highlighting. I mean, most highlighting is 2 or 3 sentences. Every now and then you're going to have a paragraph. Every now and then you're going to have a table, some sort of table to highlight, or sometimes you're going to have, 4 or 5 things you're going to highlight on one page. As you highlight it, read it. You find it first. Always find it, and then go down to the last word asked to highlight, and I've kind of marked that last word with my highlighter. That way I know where to stop highlighting that. And as I'm sliding my highlighter across it, I read the sentence. And sometimes it helps to jump back up a couple of sentences, maybe even a paragraph. Read the paragraph before and after. Not every single thing you highlight is going to be on your test. You're going to find stuff on your test that is not anywhere close to where you highlighted. That's the point of going in there and highlighting and reading before and after, a little bit before and after your book, or your what you're highlighting. Because these tests are designed to be kind of tricky. These books, these highlighting tabs, all this stuff is based off of questions that other people have gotten. But to what I understand is there is hundreds of these tests. The same test, same title, but hundreds of different questions for each book. So may be highlighting about how far to splice a piece of rebar, but the test question may be on how high off the ground the rebar has to be in a footer. So, you know, that statement may be one paragraph above what you're highlighting. So you got to do some reading. And, you know, we're right back at that. You know, I mean, that's honestly is just what you're gonna have to do. I've been building for 27 years. 27 years. You'd think by now you know it all, but I'll be for real. When you sit down and go to answering these questions, there's going to be a lot of them. You're going to look back and go, I'm going to have to look that up. I don't know. And that's just cold hard fact. I mean, we know how to build something, but a lot of the questions aren't on how to build something. I mean, I guess they are, but a lot of these questions are put in a way or asked in a way that it's not how we do it or what we do with it. It's where we're going to do it, or who's going to do it, or how long do I have to do it. Whose fault is it? Whose responsibility is it? You know, everybody has that mentality. Well, I'm only responsible for what I do. Well, you know, as a contractor, if your subcontractor Billy blows a window out, and he decides he's going to back out and leave on you, Mr. Contractor, you, at the end of the day, gonna have to buy that window. Because Billy's on the high ride. You just have to take that up with Billy, you know, however you have to do it. You either let Billy slide with it or go the legal process with Billy. I mean, is it really worth it? Some things might be, some things may not be. With that being said, these books tell you all about that. It tells you how long you have legally to do something, who you have to send it to, how long after you're completed with a job can you do this, you know. So those are questions that will be asked on that test. I've seen some of those. After a certain amount of days, you can't even file a lien on someone if you have to. If there's certain paperwork you have to give people